Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IRSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flamong. Jamie is running a little bit late. He will be here in a second. So I'm just going to get the show started and talk to you guys a little bit. Thank you, everyone, for joining the show. If you're just joining on, or if you're going to pop in later, we really appreciate that. If you're going to watch on replay, make sure to hit the like button, hit subscribe button before you get going, so we can build the channel and everything like that. Today we are going to talk about the UNLV game. We are going to talk about why I think it's a good time to buy on the Notre Dame offense. Right? CFB Hertz says buy the Notre Dame offense. Talk about buying the dip. That's right. I am buying the dip. I think it's going to be there. CFB Hertz, I appreciate it. Love these shows. Thanks for doing them. If only the football team could be as much fun to watch. You know what? Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for the super chat. In my opinion, I think that we're gonna have a good performance this weekend. That's my prediction. And then when Jamie gets here, he's going to talk about Isaiah Foskey and how he's having a better season than is conventional wisdom, right? The sack numbers aren't there, but he's got some good stuff on the pressures and that sort of thing. Mitchell, let's see. Do we score a first quarter touchdown this week? Please do. Please do. You know what? It's kind of becoming a thing, right? It's becoming a whole, like sometimes a season will have a thing, right? And so in 2002, for example, that do we score a touchdown ever on offense was a thing in the first few weeks, right? And so I think that's what this is. So this is the can't score in the first quarter, can't get a turnover ever season, and that's not good, right? I think if Notre Dame scores a touchdown in the first quarter this week, I think you can quell that. You can quell that whole thing, obviously, because it would have happened. First of all, I want to put this up, Rajon. Good morning to you as well. So you can quell it before it actually becomes like a real thing. If Notre Dame doesn't score a touchdown in this game in the first quarter, it's going to very much become like a main talking. It'll be a main talking point. Like after the game, all the recaps and everything, it's all going to talk about how they can't score a touchdown in the first quarter. And so they need to come out and score a touchdown there and get things going on offense, just for the vibes, just a straight up vibe check. So I guess I'll go into a little bit when Jamie gets here, before Jamie gets here, and then he can chime in when he gets here. But so here's the thing about the offense is, so I'm watching the game back and just kind of diagnosing, like trying to see like what's going on, what's the problem and that sort of thing. And usually for me, like when you see a bad offense, you see kind of bad offenses. Here's Jamie. Hello, sir.
Hey, sorry, there was a delivery, of course, like literally like a delivery at my house that I had to sign for and had to haul to the house. That just so happened to come just right at the time that we were about to go for the show. So
that's not acceptable from the people. So the UPS man or whoever you guys have over there, we're going to change the layout there. That's better. Hit and hustle. Jamie Uyama in the house. All right, Jamie. So I just was going to just kind of dive into why I'm buying the offense. And then we're going to get on to your Isaiah Foskey take, because I think it's interesting. It's not something that I saw coming. You put it on 6 Thoughts on a Thursday, which I think everyone should check out. 6 Thoughts on a Thursday, everyone's favorite. So, Jamie, this is what I think about the offense. And I'm curious to get your thoughts as well, because I watched the game back. And usually when the offense is – when you say it's like, okay, this offense is bad, that means they can't do anything. Everything they do is kind of just not up to snuff, right? Every run play, like the blocking is bad. Backs are picking poor holes, poor routes on offense, poor schemes, poor ideas. No one's really getting open. It's like everything's just kind of a cluster.
Yeah.
And I don't see that when I watch Notre Dame play against Stanford. Obviously, we didn't see that against BYU. We didn't see that against North Carolina. We certainly did. I don't think we saw it even against Cal when Drew Pine's kicking the ball over the field, right?
Yeah.
So that's why, for me, and obviously buying the offense is kind of a caveat to, like, they do need to get consistent play at quarterback. And that is kind of the thing, right? Like, and unfortunately, that has become unpredictable. I thought it was more predictable, but it's become a variable that is just kind of not. I don't know how we can account for that. There was no reason for Drew Pine to take a step back from what he had done the previous 2 weeks against Stanford. There wasn't anything Stanford did.
No, nothing Stanford did. I don't.
Yeah,
think so.
It wasn't anything Stanford did. It wasn't anything that Notre Dame didn't do. I think it was all there for him to have a good game, and he just didn't. So that's why I look at
even to have a decent game.
Right. And so I look at what Notre Dame did on offense, and I look at, I think the inclusion of Tobias Merriweather as a threat is kind of a huge deal, honestly. It's crazy what can happen when you add one player. You have one player that you insert, and that kind of changes.
Just one guy
things.
who can bring a different element to
right.
the offense.
Because the thing with Tobias is, it's not that he was in there and it's like, okay, play the freshman great. It doesn't mean he's actually going to be good when he gets in there. And they threw him 2 routes. And to quote his dad, Don Merriweather, it's barbecue chicken on both routes, right? You got obviously the touchdown, and then you got the slot fade. Where
I like that barbecue chicken.
That barbecue chicken. That's what he told me. That's what they call it. So it just slot fade, and he's wide open on that one too. And in port 21, I mean, he must feel like the luckiest man in the world, because he had no chance against him, and Notre Dame didn't try it. They tried it twice. He only had to pay for it once. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm coming at from the offensive standpoint. How do you feel about it?
I think that's probably pretty fair, because I think, especially when you go back and rewatch the game, and I know, like, whenever you say that, people are like, "Oh God, you rewatch the game?" Yeah, we have to. It's our job. We have to rewatch.
I like
the game.
to. I don't.
Yeah.
It's weird to me. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
It's I like.
I mean, whatever. I wouldn't be like. Trust me, if I wasn't getting paid, I probably wouldn't rewatch. I wouldn't be like, man, I got to rewatch this Stanford game again. I would probably just move on with my life and go to whatever. But
right.
I have to, and I genuinely enjoy doing it, even when it's bad, because you learn stuff from it. And I think if you look at the rest of the pieces, like you said, on offense, I mean, the offensive line played pretty well. Played I would say almost really well.
Yeah,
they barely got any pressure on Pine. And even say that sack at the end of the game, that's on Pine. Ball's got to be out. Ball's got to be out. Hit
and better pocket awareness too,
for sure. And
so, on the fumble, by the way, before halftime, because he's not hit. He didn't get hit. He's being loose with the ball, and the guy slaps at it. He didn't get. He would have been fine. All he had to do was back up in the pocket a little bit.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the receivers in the game, and just the overall performance of the game, you can say that even a semi fumbles at the end of the game, it was more of a great play than it was
he wasn't loose with the ball.
He wasn't loose with the ball like he was when he was trying to reach over in the North Carolina game. That was just a really good hit by the Stanford guy. And I mean, you could say kind of the styles drops okay, but those weren't killers if you think about it. That wasn't really those are and not great passes, right? So and there was the PI. So I mean, the rest of the team did more than well enough to, or the rest of the offense did more than well enough to play. If they play like that every week, and the quarterback, like I said, is just decent, they score over 30 easy in the game. So I think that's the one thing that the variable you can't predict, because I think if you look at it, and as I wrote about in 6 Thoughts, Drew Pine has had 2 really good games and 2 replacement level games, right? Where he looks like, oh, that's the backup, right? So I don't know what you're going to get. Like, I would assume that he's probably going to have a good game this week. But my only thing with the offense is, what's the plan if he's not on? That's what I think is the main thing, because the rest of the guys are doing good enough. So what's the plan if he's not on? And whether that means going to Steve Angeli and whatever, but even if that might not be an option, right? Everyone can say that, like, they need to give this guy a look, but, like, I mean, he might just be way worse if they put him in, right? So it's easy to say that, like, they should put in Angeli, but it's a little bit different when it's it's actual game time. But what are you doing to make it easier for Pine to be more successful? So whether that's, like, I don't know, like some just like more layup stuff, more like bubbles, more screen game stuff, more similar to kind of some of the stuff you did in the Cal game, really, right? If you can get away with it, right? Like, and not you don't want to be totally like that, because then you're handcuff your entire offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you have to mix some of that in just to get a guy confidence. Because I promise you, if Tommy Rees would have kind of kept the same mode of attack that they had at the beginning of that Cal game, and they kept going on with it, and Drew Pine just was like bad that whole game, he would have been bad the next week too against North Carolina. He kind of needed just a little bit of something to be like, okay, he did enough there, right? And then that's kind of built from there. So you constantly, and you don't want to be in a position where you're doing this, where you have to, like, keep building on your quarterback's confidence. But I think that's probably where they're at.
Yeah. And that's, and even that, right? Like, you're in a bad spot when you're having to, okay, we have these plays, schemes, whatever you want to say, that we know will work, but we don't know if we can execute them now because of the play of the quarterback. And so now we have to kind of scrap the things that we know will be effective and find some way to get him going and get the offense going, right? So you're dealing from, like, that's not a position of strength, clearly, and not ideal. So, but he does have to figure it out. That's his job and everything. And then one last thing about the offense too is, so how we did the defense, where we were saying, like, okay, you go down each individual player. Is this player playing better than we would have expected? Da, 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 da. And this is why I'm buying the offense, right? Because if you look at the offense itself and you look at the individual pieces, I think you would find more players that are at least playing as well, right? So you look at Joe Alt and Blake.
They're
Fisher,
better from the beginning of the season, yes,
right, for sure. And so and so you go on, and it's like an offensive line, right? Like, I feel like that unit now is playing to the point where it's like, oh, well, this is what we pretty much expected. We pretty much expected they would be playing this well, and we expected they'd be very good. So it's like to get your expectations there. I think that works. I think we've gotten more from Jaden Thomas. I think they've gotten more from, obviously, Michael Mayer is a star. I think they've gotten more from Estime. I think they've gotten more from Diggs. I think they've gotten more from, the thing with Lindsey, they've gotten what they need from him. Just hit him when he's wide open for touchdowns. Seriously, I think all of the get Lindsey off the field stuff, I think, is completely misguided. It is completely misguided. He could be having a huge season, right? So I don't think Lindsey's been a problem. And people just kind of like the fact that he made a very difficult catch in the Ohio State game, right? He didn't have a lot of opportunities to make catches, and then he threw him the ball, and he made a diving catch. It was a huge play in the game. So I think you look at that. I think you look at who the other wide receivers. I said Jaden Thomas. So Styles is tough. I think before last game, we would have been like, we're getting what we expect from Styles. And then he had a poor game last game, so it kind of feels like you're going the wrong way. But generally speaking, I think Styles has been fine.
But yeah, it's one game. Yeah.
Right, it's one game. And so that's why I think if we can get consistent quarterback play, the offense, like, to me, the offense is not a problem in terms of personnel and, like, week to week. It's just that, are we going to get the consistent quarterback play from Pine?
And I think guys are developing.
Right.
I think guys are developing. Like, I think like like Blake Fisher is a perfect example of a guy that I would say, you know, you look at, people only see when they watch offensive line, you say, oh man, he got beat inside in the one sack. Well, I mean, and then the second one was not on him. But anyways, the first one, he gets beat with a good move. It's like, well, just because you get beat one play doesn't mean that he hasn't been good. You know, like he has been better, right? Or like, do you ever notice that no one's talking about Josh Lugg? And that's a good thing. Like no one's talking about like, man, Lugg is just it's not happening, right? Like he's been more than fine, right? And he gave up like one pressure on like he got beat inside by on an inside rip move, but like just getting beat on one play is not mean that he stinks, right? So I think like, you know, when you look at the totality of it, I think you're exactly right. Like there's individuals are getting better as a unit. I think they're getting better. You just got to get the quarterback piece of it. And there's just no reason why they shouldn't, you know, be a lot more productive than they are.
I'm going to get into some of these questions because there's been a lot of questions that are pretty good. So Mitchell Vahalik says, would simplifying the offense and defense equate to more consistent success?
You know what? I don't know what the answer is on terms of like simplifying the defense, because I think it's fair to say that when you watch some of the guys, like when they're playing like the linebackers playing run, that it looks like they're thinking too much because you're like, they're not playing fast. Right. So I think it's fair to say that. So you're like, oh, you know, make it more simple. And then, you know, like it's something I wrote about and we talked about, you know, after the game on the post-game show. And then I wrote about this week too, with the third down, they do far less in terms of what they're doing, in terms of pressures and simulating pressures and all these kind of things. They like make it very simple for opposing quarterbacks and protections to have to worry about. So like, I think when you do that kind of stuff too, and maybe it's just me, because I don't think that stuff is hard. You know what I mean? Because I think it's defined, right? That stuff, especially, it's defined. It's like, all right, you're gonna like line up in the A gap, but you're dropping the hook curl or whatever, right? Like that's all defined there for you. So I think almost that stuff makes it kind of easier, rather than, because I don't think these guys have been good at like reading and just recognizing things and doing stuff. So if you make it more defined for them, perhaps they play faster. So maybe that makes it, is that simplifying? I don't know if it is, because it's technically adding more scheme, I guess. But like, they're not, if you're just saying like, hey, just play base and just play free, I mean, it's not working. Like it's not, that part's not working. So, and then on offense, I don't know. I don't think they're asking too much of the offense, you know? And I know like everybody wants to jump on, oh, the scan offense and whatever, the check with me's and stuff like that. I mean, it worked pretty good the previous 2 weeks. If the quarterback does his job, everybody's talking about, man, what a great game again, right? Like, I think that's got a lot to it. Like you said, I didn't see a lot of confusion from the rest of the guys. You know, everybody seemed to be doing their job. You know, there wasn't a lot of like guys pointing fingers like, hey, weren't you supposed to do this or that? Like there wasn't like the one earlier in the season where Tobias, you know, was supposed to go in motion. He didn't. I haven't seen a lot of that at all. So
right.
I don't know. I don't think the answer is make it more simple on offense.
Do you know what the origin of the phrase scan offense comes from? Do you know what that origin is?
I don't know. I just know that
Where did that come from?
I think that
Notre Dame's done check with me's forever. Like I don't understand. Like
I don't know.
Did someone say it? Like did Jason Garrett
said
say
it?
I
think Jason Garrett might have said it in the broadcast, and then it becomes a thing, and then all of a sudden it's like the beat starts being like, well, the scan offense, like, or just in the fans or whatever. Because I've never heard it called the scan offense from anyone. It's always been, because that's the thing. That's why it's for as long as there's been no huddle in college football, and I mean probably in football in general, there's always been check with me because they go up to the line and they sometimes they don't even have a call. They just go up to the line and then they get the call based on what they're looking
Everett Golson did this.
Everett Golson. I mean, it's been yeah.
Kaiser did it. Like
it's been like over 10 years. It's been over 10 years that this has been a thing. So I don't
know
really
the scan offense stuff. Like I don't know where it came from. And if you know, please put it in the comments.
It's just they're doing more of it now. And I actually think because I mean that was one of my complaints with Chip Long is I think he was more worried about tempo and just kind of getting stuff, and then they would get caught in plays all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, like
you
why
need to get out of it?
They need to get out of it. And they were bad, and then drives would die, right? Because of it. So like I'm totally fine with the check with me stuff. And I'm even fine with them playing at a slow pace. That's fine to me, but you gotta execute. Or else, then I mean, you got to execute no matter what offense you're running, or that's going to work. Because you can play as fast as you want. People are like, "All right, we're going to sprint up to the line and we're going to do this." It's like, well, if you don't block the 3 technique and you're running an inside zone and you run up to the line and run an inside zone, guess what? It's not going to work, right? It doesn't matter how fast you go. So it's really just. I mean, I think it's just people just arguing over nothing over it. I'm not a big fan of the term scan offense.
And I said it before. Notre Dame, so look at the final drive, right? Michael Mayer has to come out on the 4th and 8 play because he's exhausted. You can't, when your best player is the tight end, you cannot go fast. He's a big guy. He can't just be running up and down all the time. If you need him on 3rd down, you can't be going super fast because you need his legs. It's just a fact of it, right? If you're going to be a big team, you're going to be a power team, you can't be going fast, especially when your best player is a tight end. CFB Hurts not calling for a full-time replacement, but if Pine struggles early again, would you bring Angeli in for a series or 2 to settle things down? Seemed to help with Cone a couple times last year.
I mean, I think it worked because you came in and it was such like a change of pace with Buckner and what he presented and the differences between him and Cone. I think Angeli's more of a runner. Like Angeli will run, and you can run zone read with him. And he's a better athlete than Pine, I think. And so I guess there's some of that, but it's not like you're going to come in and all of a sudden just do something completely different. And I mean, it's just the fact, even though I've liked everything that I've seen just in the brief instances from Angeli and like I've heard good things. I mean, I just have no idea whether or not he's kind of ready to even come in and it's not just going to be a disastrous 3 and out. I have no idea. Right. I guess we will never know until they give him a chance, but that's just, I don't really know if that, I can't really say that's the answer. I mean, I could just speculate it's not working with Pine. You have to do something, but I don't know if that's the thing.
Yeah. Question from C-Mac. Hey guys, has Notre Dame given an update how Tyler Buckner is doing since his surgery? Is he rehabbing yet? Is he redshirting?
Well, he'll definitely be redshirting, right? Because he's going to miss this. He's going to miss the season. So
I know he's still in a sling.
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea like where his rehabs. I mean, he wasn't the type of surgery he had. He wouldn't even be throwing a football until like, and I know he's not, it's on the opposite shoulder, but he wouldn't even be like doing any of that upper body kind of stuff until like before a bowl game or something like that. Like, and chances are he wouldn't be ready to play in that. So, I mean, I think it's just they anticipate that he's going to be ready for the spring, but haven't heard any other updates other than that.
Okay. Yeah, same. Yeah, he's up in the booth with Reese doing charting, I guess. This is the 1 foot down guys brought it up on the pod, and I was curious how you felt about it. Do you think Reese should consider coming out of the booth, going on the field?
I don't know, because he's been up there for a long time now. And
so let me make the case that they made so you understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
The idea is if the problem is execution, like we say, and the problem is not a play calling thing, then why not come down and be able to talk to Pine to his face, give him like real, like not on the phone, because the other thing you can do is you can include other people in the conversation as well. So if he's on the phone, it's a singular conversation between Reese and Pine. Whereas if he's down on the field, he can talk to kind of everyone at the same time and get a pulse that way. That's the case that they made. I mean, obviously you have to weigh the negative returns you might get on the play calling piece, right? So
yeah.
So what I mean, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I like that idea of him being able to communicate with Pine, especially when like things aren't going good like that.
Right.
But I just and it could work, but it also is just something that, like, literally when he was the quarterback coach, he was up there. So I mean, since he's been on the staff, so when was that? 2017. That's all he's done since he's been. So like, I don't know. He's just used to doing that. I don't know if that's the right call or if he would even feel comfortable with that. Like, and I think that's what it kind of comes down to as well. Like, I think, like, you know, Clark Lee obviously was someone who called it from up there. And they seem to kind of get it right. I mean, maybe Pine needs more than that, and they need somebody else there. And then they had the kind of like Brian Kelly down there, right, to kind of be that kind of buffer there. And now they don't have that. But you know, I don't know. Maybe that is the answer, but I mean, I don't know if Pine. I can't say that Pine would play better just because Reese is down on the field. You know.
Yeah, and this was, remember when we talked about this way back in like March and April, or maybe even February. Like, who's going to be the sounding board for the offense when like Brian Kelly's gone? It's not going to be Freeman, because Freeman's, it's not his side of the ball. So who is it going to be? You know, and this is when
McNulty's gone and Lance
McNulty's
Taylor's
gone. Right, Lance Taylor's gone, and so it's just like who's the sounding board there, and that might be, there might be something to that where it's like the offense gets kind of, you know, stagnant in the first quarter, and there's no one down there to kind of settle it down or just talk to them, because I know Brian Kelly would talk to the quarterback.
Yeah,
he always did that. So that's, you know, that's a concern, I think, going forward, and that's something they need to work out. Because it is true. Like, once this offense gets kind of discombobulated and they get feeling not great, it does kind of linger. You know, it doesn't go away. And this is where like losing the touchdowns. Like, so people, when I talk about like Drew Pine is not like when it's like how big of a deal it is that you're missing the touchdowns when you're down 7-0, and it's like, oh, but that's only one play. It's like, yeah, but plays build on the moments, build on each other. You score a touchdown, let's say the one to Mayer counts, right? Well, then it's 7-7. You just feel completely different, right? Like, how bad do you feel going into halftime down 10-0? You know, you feel terrible. It's like, we haven't scored yet. Jesus, you could have scored in the first quarter. You know, when you hit if you hit Braden Lindsey, okay, no, we got a touchdown. We're all good, right? We're fine. You know, we got the touchdown. Let's start rolling now. But that never happens. Instead, you get stopped on 4th and 2, and you get the opposite emotion. You get, Jesus, we blew it. We had it. We blew it. We had all these touchdowns that we didn't score, and now we have no points. So it just, that's the thing that keeps manifesting itself. Another question from Rajan: how do we keep defense from loading the box?
I mean, you kill them by throwing. That's what,
and that's where Tobias is such a big deal, because
you win the one-on-ones.
He is a one-on-one beater, man. And if I was watching tape, if I was UNLV watching tape in the backfield, I'd be concerned. I would be very like, look, they've got some guys that can just run by me, because you've got Tobias on a safety who's like at 10 yards, and he's cooking them. You know, it's like, that's, you see anything in the defense, and when you're in the backfield and you watch that on tape, it's like, oh boy, I gotta be careful here.
And like, here's a question too: When's the last time Notre Dame got a big play outside the numbers?
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's a problem. Just all the way around.
yeah.
I mean, it would be the throw to Jaden Thomas.
Yeah. And which was underthrown, and it was a great catch, but yeah.
Right.
But I think so. That's part of the reason too, right? Is that like, okay, well, now you have this advantage outside where you got a 1-on-1 or whatever. Well, you got to be able to win there. And whether that's the receiver or the quarterback, and I think a lot of the times it's been the quarterback, but you have to be able to win outside there. You got to be able to kill them on play action. I think Reese has actually done a pretty good job of, like, you think of, like, okay, you get the single high look and you get that play to Tobias, right?
Yeah.
You get both of those plays to Tobias, right? Where you have, your 3-by-1 and you have Tobias inside the slot, run a slot fade. Like, that's because, they're worried about the run there, right? So I think, and even some of the stuff like the Cal plays where they, got the backs in the middle of the field, right? Those are plays where they take advantage of that. So that's something I think that, like,
is this showing up? Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Okay. So this is another way, loading the box, right? They have 7 inside and you're blitzing. Okay. This ball has to come out. Now the arrows, this is not what they did. They did not do this. They just, like, he's pointing them out, but really they just run block, right?
Yeah.
This ball's got to come out. If you're doing this, like, and here's the other part. Any offense is going to bubble this. They will have an RPO attached to this. Instead, It's just straight give, inside run. They don't have an RPO attached.
Notre Dame had a bubble attached to this last year.
Right.
So this is something that I did today on Six Thoughts. Like, why don't they do this anymore? Like, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Is it, and if the answer is Pine is incapable of making those decisions, then like, that's bad.
I cannot. I cannot get behind that. I cannot. I will not. I
think it's like I refuse to believe that, because that's something a high school quarterback, that's something that he did as a high school quarterback. Yeah. So I refuse to believe that it's not, he's not smart enough to make that decision. He can't count. He can count that, oh, hey, we have an advantage to the outside. And it's like, well, how do you think Styles even just started to become a factor last year?
Yeah.
They threw him screens. This, the slot there would have been Avery Davis last year, and you would do it. But here's the other thing. If Styles is lined up in the slot there and you're throwing that to him, I don't even care if that's Michael Mayer you're throwing a bubble to. Guess what? He's going to have a one-on-one with a safety. That safety's got to come down and tackle him. That's going to be a win a lot of times for Notre Dame. Like, why aren't you doing that? And that was like why, like, Brandon Wimbush, like, it became impossible to have him as the quarterback because he was scared to throw it.
Yeah.
Because he was, like, inaccurate with that. He was scared to throw that. And at the beginning, if you look at, like, how Josh Adams and Wimbush got all these big runs of the thing, they were worried because there was always RPOs attached to those things. But then they really realized, like, oh, it doesn't even matter if we just have numbers on the outside. He's never going to throw this. And that's why, like, they lost to Stanford at the end of the year, even though that Stanford team wasn't good, because Wimbush refused to throw it. So I don't even think they refuse to throw it. They're just not doing it. And I don't know why. That it's a mystery.
And this is how you create opportunities for these guys in space, right? Because this guy's head up on Lindsey. He's going to go with him if Lindsey shows inside, right? And since he's behind line of scrimmage, Lindsey could just block him. I mean, this is how you get house calls. Yes. Anytime, like, you watch a ton of games. You can watch any game, any weekend. Some guy, it's like, oh wow, they busted. It's like, well, look at what Stanford's doing. They are being so unsound out here. It's just literally just like, all you got to do is bubble it, throw it. And here's the other part. Let's say they have a mix-up, right? This guy jumps here. It's like, oh, I'm going to jump this route because that's what happens. And that's when Braden Lindsey comes free. You put them in a position where it's like you get guys confused and you have to make a decision. So this is how you punish teams for loading up in the box. This is how you do it right here. This kind of stuff. So, and it's so it's 1st and 10, and you run into it. You run into this, and this guy comes unblocked. He tackles him for a 3-yard loss, that's not only are you creating a bad play, but you're throwing away an explosive opportunity for your offense.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. If you're going to check with the sideline, you get into a play like similar to that Jaden Thomas 4th down play. When it's bad play and you're coming up to the line, either you have the freedom to call a timeout or you got to get out of it somehow.
Yeah.
You got to find a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
Like that's, that's crucial, right? Like sometimes that, because if a play's going to fail, like why are you running it?
Yeah. All right, this will be the last one, and then we got to move on to the Foskey thing because it's a good discussion too. Westwood Manor Films, how concerned should we be our current offense and possible OC change next season, and what this means for CJ Carr's recruitment?
I mean, it's just impossible to speculate. Like, I don't know what's going to happen because I don't know how these last 6 games are going to go, and I have no idea like how. With recruiting, it's so far away. It's pretty obvious to me. Like, I don't think there's any way that CJ Carr is going to reclassify. It's just way too late now. I just don't see it happening. So, he's going to be 2024. That's still like a year away. There's just so many things that can happen, even if Tommy Rees is around. Like, I mean, kids change their mind all the time. And then also too, like, I don't know. There's also some kids who are like, no matter what, I'm going to Notre Dame. Right. Like I personally don't know, what is in CJ Carr's head. So I have no idea. But I think like if you're CJ Carr, and you consider like, he's from obviously a football family, you got to be aware that there's the potential for your coach to leave. Like that's something that could happen.
News that's breaking, Jamie. Found out about this yesterday. I think Matt. Let's see if Matt actually broke the story. It was probably Marcus who said it in his conference call. But Eli Raridan tore his ACL in practice again. So, do you know if it's the same one or a different one or what?
I don't know, but most of the time in these situations, as I was talking to my wife about it yesterday, it's the opposite one because as you're getting back in training, you overwork, and that's just tends to happen, right? So it sucks, and it's like one of these things. And I know that, and I asked my wife too, is like, is this on the training staff? Is this something that like, you should be blaming, like he shouldn't have been back this soon. And it's like, you can say that everybody should wait a year, right, before they come back. And obviously he had torn his ACL.
By the way, it's the same ACL.
It's the same. Yeah. So you can say, oh man, he came back. Like he came back too soon or whatever, right? But it's like, all athletes want to do is come back and try to play. And all you can do is just, if they're trying to push it and do everything they can, and if they're like physically capable of running, and he's obviously was physically capable, he was squatting, he was doing all these things. I mean, I don't know how you say no to that, right? Like it's not something that's simple. And it's true. Some people come back and there's nothing happens, right? But I mean, it just obviously sucks for Notre Dame because, and way more sucks for Eli because, you have him do that. Avery Davis, same thing, really, right? Where he had his ACL again too. And I mean, it's just, it's a brutal situation in terms of what it means for this year. I don't think it means a lot because Mitchell Evans just came back and he's probably going to play that exact same role that Raridan was. And, it's nice to say, oh, Raridan could have had this big thing. I was like, well, they never threw him the ball once yet. So we don't know anything about what he could do as a player. But I think you look at like, now the depth is worse because they have, they're all, anytime it's an ACL, assume it is a non-contact, like it's like 90% of the time it is a non-contact. The other 10% is like a guy got rolled up on and you just got your twisted. But it's rare, right? It's very rare that's happened because it's more of like the stress that it's being put on and whatever. Right? And I didn't just stay at a Holiday Inn. I'm married to a physiotherapist, so she tells me all these stuff. But I think that, with this, in terms of this year, like it probably doesn't mean much. They'll be fine in terms of like they can still run 3 tight end sets easily. Like obviously they still got Davis Sherwood, they got Evans, they got Holden Stays. They'll be fine, which just sucks because Raritan there's no way I see him participating in the spring. So he's not going to participate in the spring.
Well, he shouldn't now, right?
No, 100%. So that's no way.
Even if
no
he
way.
could. So
he might not do much in the summer next year, to be honest, because it's not going to be a year, right? So, I think if you were thinking that Eli Raritan had a chance at being tight end 1 next year, it's probably, I would say those are long odds right now because you're just kind of hoping he gets back at some point next year. Yeah. And then obviously, you're going to lose Michael Mayer. So, he'll go to the NFL. And so it'll be Evans, Stays, Barong. And I mean, I don't know what Bauman, but who knows with Bauman, in terms of how his injuries is going and stuff too. Right. So, but it does make me think like maybe they will look, because they got 2 guys who obviously are down and they're going to lose Mayer. Do they maybe look at another tight end in this class? Yeah. Maybe. I think they could, right?
Yeah.
Obviously they already got the kid from De La Salle.
Flanagan. And as far as, coming back early, it's hard for an athlete to be cleared. It's cleared, right? I mean, he can run, he can do everything he wants to do. And it's like, well, you're not going to play out of precaution, right? Because the other part too is he could sit a year and the same thing could happen. A healthy player is going to play. That's just the nature of sports. It's not even, it's like your hamstring, right? You hurt your hamstring, there's a minimum amount of time that you should sit, just period.
Yeah.
But if you can run and if you feel good to go, you're going to go.
Yeah.
Because you're in the sport to play the sport, so it's like, and since you can't guarantee health regardless, you'll do it, so.
And I mean, and I think, as obviously disheartening as it must be for him, at least Notre Dame has had guys that they can point to and say, like, I mean, True Tranquil, you would have said his career was right off at the beginning of beginning of his career, right? Like first 2 years.
And he just had a huge game for the Chargers.
And he was obviously like completely healthy, minus a sprained ankle that he missed like a game for in 2018. But like he never had any serious injuries in the last couple of years where he was great for Notre Dame. Yeah. And even Sean Crawford, just even the fact that he was if you would have told me after the second injury his career was done, the guy had like 3 or 4, right? Like and he was able to come back too. So we'll see. I mean, I really hope that he's able to come back and have kind of like a tranquil kind of story, because he's obviously a super, super talented kid.
All right, Jamie, let's get into this Isaiah Foskey thing. Okay, so I think the conventional wisdom is he's having a down year. Okay, and probably production wise, especially. But tell me about the pressures, man. Tell me about the hurries and all those other things.
So I mean, it is fair in terms of you look at the sack numbers, right? The sack numbers are down. It's clear, and then obviously it wasn't just the sacks with him. The guy had 6 forced fumbles last year. So if we're talking about havoc and all the kind of stuff he did, like he made like game-changing plays last year. Mm-hmm. And then when you're not getting to the quarterback as much, that's going to be viewed in it. And I actually think too, and I know we were like talking about like, oh, where was Foskey in this game? But then you go back and look at the game and you look at Stanford and say, Well, they only had 4 true pass sets in the game. True pass sets means like just straight dropbacks where they're like, it's not quick game. It's not play action. It's not like moving the pocket on a sprint out or whatever. It's, just straight true drop. They only had 4 straight true dropbacks in the game where the ball wasn't out in like, less than like 1.5 seconds really.
Mm-hmm.
So when you play in that kind of game, no one is going to get a lot of pressure in the game. So that in terms of that kind of being a factor in that game, that's why they did that to protect their thing. And that means they could throw the ball down the field very far. It was the average depth of target was like 4.4 yards or whatever it was. And so that kind of takes them out of the game. So you have a game like that and you're like, man, and then it goes back like Foskey should have dominated that game. It's like, look at their whatever. You go back and watch and like, I mean, he was like, had their tackle on skates most of the game. Mm. He was a factor on a lot of running plays and stuff too when he was in there. And then, yeah, his pressure rate this year, and that was the one thing last year is like he had those splash plays and those sacks, but his pressure numbers weren't that great. Like it wasn't like unbelievable. So this year, he was 14.4% pass rush win rate according to PFF last year. He's 14.9. So that's better this year. It's just slightly better. But true pass sets, 20.5% last season, 25.5 this year. So that's significantly better, right? And if you really look at like total pressures, he's like on pace to do better than he was last year. And even though he's, they're doing things like they're double teaming him more, he's getting chipped, whatever. They're chipping with the backs more, the tight ends, or he's gotten a lot more attention than he had, last year. So you take that all into account, you're like, well, really, like the numbers say, and then really, if you kind of go back and actually watch the film, he hasn't had the impact in terms of like these big havoc plays and these big game-changing sacks, but pressure numbers, he's better than he was last year. Yeah. And they're also, I think they're going to play more teams. Like Clemson is going to like take shots down the field and whatever. And he's going to have chances in that Clemson game to make an impact, right? Like he's going to have chances, I think, in this game to make more of an impact in with what they do in the passing game, right? Like they're going to play offenses that it's going to set up for him to have a bigger impact and make these plays. And I doubt that he's going to get back to, what he had finished 11 sacks last year. I like seriously doubt he's going to get to 11 sacks, even if he has like a couple monster games. But it doesn't mean that his play was worse. And I'm not saying he is I don't think he's playing at the same level that, say, like when Julian Okwara was a junior, because he played like at a really, really high level, right? At that year. I wouldn't say he's playing quite to that. And if you look at like Julian Okwara, like could have probably left that year and been like, he had a chance of being a first round pick. He came back, obviously broke his ankle and then didn't become a high pick. But I think if you look at it, and he just hasn't had this game where he's just taken over a game. Like the closest thing is probably the Cal game, right? And I think people are waiting for that, and that's fine. You should kind of expect more of that. But really, overall, he's been as good and in some ways even better than he was last year.
That's good stuff, Jamie. That's good stuff. I mean, obviously, yeah, there needs to be the production piece, but if you look at, the numbers are the numbers, right? And he's doing what he's doing. So hopefully that just, hopefully those pressures lead to more, sacks and havoc and all those other things. So that's good stuff. All right, we need to get into this game. we need to talk about UNLV for a little bit. I mean, I think Notre Dame's now a 27-point favorite. They've lost their last two games.
That's 40 a crazy high number.
Yeah, they've lost the last two games 40-7, 42-7. It seems like they've got some injuries going on. So Jamie, tell me the story about the UNLV football team.
Well, I think too that's one of the reasons why the numbers keep going up, because they're thin at certain positions, and so like their running back Robbins, who's a pretty good back. He's big kid, 6'2", 230. He is, I think, going to be out this because, I mean, he left the game. He hurt his knee last game. I mean, I guess there's a chance if he sprained his knee that he could come back this week, but like, I doubt it. And if he comes back, if he doesn't come back, they have one scholarship back there who's like kind of like a little scat back guy and much different runner, and then a walk on. So that would be a huge loss. The quarterback, Brumfield, is coming off a concussion that he suffered a couple weeks ago. But I mean, the fact that he was still day to day on Monday, they weren't sure if he was going to play. I don't know if he's going to play this week. Like, they were sure there was another guy who had a similar injury, and then he's back already. So
yeah,
I think that, and my guess is that UNLV probably views this game as like, we don't have a even great shot at winning this game, even if, and it's more important that we win like more games in the Mountain West than games, rather than bringing a guy back too early, especially from a concussion.
Yeah.
So I think they would be cautious there. And if he doesn't play, there's a big drop off between him and the next guy for them, right? Like, he's been good for them this year. Like, I think PFF has him the fifth highest graded quarterback in the country. And I don't think he's that good. I don't think he's like top 5 quarterback in the country, but I mean, he's certainly been like surprising to me in terms of what he's done. I think he's got really nice touch. He's a good athlete. He can run. He's got a pretty good arm in terms of like making some of those like intermediate throws over the middle of the field where he can really zip it in a tight window. And I think he's like a pretty decent player, but so just say like him and the running back don't play. They're not going to score many points. They only scored 7 points in each of the last 2 games, right? So I don't see them scoring a lot of points. And then defensively, like, just numbers wise, they're a terrible defense. And then, they give up some of the free access stuff. So that's a way to get Drew Pine to get, whatever. And the reason why they give it up is because they're scared of getting beat over the top. They're scared of getting beat over the top, right? And the one thing you have to worry about them is they will kind of like try to jump some of those short throws. They have 11 picks on the year. But I think, though, they also had 5 of those picks came in against one game, right? Utah State. So, and I think Notre Dame will be able to run on them like all day. So I do think this is a game, like, there's just no way that things would have to be, it would have to be an absolute disaster for Notre Dame to lose this game. It's not that it couldn't happen. I guess.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Well, there's, I think, Statso or Parker, who does the great work with all his EPA stuff and his, advanced stats kind of previews for this game. And obviously this isn't exactly how the game goes, but it's just how people have performed and how it matches up in terms of like, EPA and how things match up against each other, expected points added match up against each other. And they had a 3% chance to win this game. So you can see, then you start to see why it's like the number's 28 when you see some of the injuries they've had. And then I know they're like thin on the back end too. So, even if Pine has like a kind of bad game like he had in the previous game, they still could probably just run the ball on them and score like over 30 points pretty easily. And UNLV's not going to score 30.
Yeah, this is why, like I say, like at the beginning, buy the offense, because it's not that they don't have good stuff. You know what I mean? Like the reason they didn't score against Stanford is it's all kind of like self-inflicted, like there's no reason to think that they should just come out and do the things. Like if you play the Stanford game on another day, right? You play it today. I would pick the same score, honestly. Like what did I pick? 41-21 Notre Dame to win. If they're playing this game,
I'd probably pick it in the 30s, but I would say Notre Dame is definitely going to win the game.
I'd pick the same score. Like it really could have happened. You know, it's just like you play the game once and it went how it went. But I would pick it the same way because all the things that I thought were true are still true. It's not like Stanford showed me something; they didn't.
No.
So like, you know, and look at if the Filkins wants to put the ball on the ground all the time, like okay, then you know, I assume Notre Dame would eventually get some of those. So that's kind of how I feel about that. I mean, I'm picking so like I'm picking this game as if last week's game went how I expected it to go.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm saying 40-10, and
that's covering.
That's covering, and that's what I'm going with.
I actually already sent in my prediction to Mike too, and guess what? I picked up the cover as well. I picked the win 45-13.
Yeah, like I don't think Pine's gonna be as bad. I think he's gonna kind of revert back to what he was.
I just think he just doesn't even have to be like. I don't even think he has to be like, well, 75% completions in this game. Like he's like, I don't even think he has to do that. I just think he just has to be like, you know, just make some throws on first down. Make some throws on first down. Get some play action. You know, hit a couple big plays here and there. And then Notre Dame runs for 300 yards. Yeah. Like I think Notre Dame could run for 300 yards in this game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's. I mean, I think if they were playing Syracuse this week, I would not be.
That's
confident
different.
In that.
That'd be different.
But they're not playing Syracuse, so yeah. I just think that you're also getting UNLV at a time when they lost the last two games 82-14. So. I don't think they're coming in super confident either. I mean, yeah, I guess you could have said Stanford wasn't super confident, but Notre Dame allowed them to gain confidence. So if Notre Dame comes out and they actually start fairly fast, I mean, I guess they really haven't done it all year, but other than BYU, if they do that, I mean, then I think it'll be a wrap quickly, but I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's call it for today. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for all the comments.
Thanks everybody.
This is a really good time. As always, we'll be back. But here's the thing, Jamie. I don't know. I don't think I can do the post-game show. I don't think I can do the post-game show this week. There's soccer stuff going on, so it's gonna have to be you and Mike. But everyone should still tune in for that for the post-game instant reaction recap. I will be back on Sunday for my normal time, my morning after show. So that I'm gonna be on that. And so you're going to want to look out for that. Look out for that. Go to the site, check out all our predictions, and you're going to want to look at those. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Do it right now. Do it this second. Do it this second. Do it this second. It's very easy. Just click. You just click. You just put it. Click it. Click subscribe. Click the like. All right. No problem, baby beast. I like soccer because my kids are playing. So thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend, and we will talk to you Saturday and on Sunday.